And like, what did he do?
Yeah.
That was like...
Well, the main thing, it couldn't be anything bad for two reasons, but the main one being, if it was, he would know what he did.
Okay.
And then so you're in his head because it's first person. He wouldn't not be able to just, he would say at some point early on, okay, I'm sure it's because of this.
Okay. See, I kept thinking that he did, it was something bad, but it was like something that he was blind to.
Yeah.
Or like didn't
Yeah,
realize, and that he would just be like crushed when he found out.
I still remember, I know exactly where on the freeway we were. I was talking with one of my writing partners. She knew the story, it was really early on. I'm like, I still don't know, I can't figure out what, because I was like a couple chapters into it. And she said, you know, he's the eyes and ear. That's who the person the reader's identifying with. If it was something horrendous that he did, then the readers, it's just going to totally almost wreck the reading experience.
Yeah,
because that's the person you're identifying with. So it almost has to be let him off the hook, but then there has to be a reason for her to talk about him still.
Right.
So it was, you know, it was really one of those weird things.
Yeah, it was perfect though. But I was just the whole waiting.
Yeah, I know.
What did he do? Oh man.
Sure.
Can you say a little bit about what you hope teens will get out of reading 13 Reasons Why?
Yeah, the main thing I was trying to say in the book is essentially just the golden rule. That, you know, one, it's just important to treat people with kindness for all the obvious reasons. But what I wanted to show in the book is another reason is because you don't know what else anybody's dealing with, you know, and as well as just people are different. People have different thresholds of what they can tolerate, what they can handle. But, you know, especially, you know, something could happen to me that maybe I know isn't a big deal, so I can brush it off. But if I was in a point in my life where it seemed like just the world was coming down on me, even a small thing would just affect me much more. So that was the main thing I was trying to say, you know. Things affect people differently based on who they are and what they've experienced. And that's my main focus when I was writing it. And it wasn't until I started hearing from readers that it's not that there are different things that the book says, but they're picking up on different things. You know, the importance of reaching out. And that wasn't a big thing I was trying to say, but it is definitely in there. I didn't realize how much it was in there until readers started telling me. It made me, you know, reach out to this girl who I knew was having difficult times, and so it's been amazing.
Yeah. The hard thing for me reading it was like wanting to go back in time.
Yes.
Like, oh, I could have done things so differently, you know.
Yeah.
But there's always the present.
Yeah. Well, but I thought about. I mean, there's definite things that I can look back on and go, whether it's I knew that person was having trouble, but I did nothing about it. And wow, wouldn't it have been wonderful to be that person for that person? But as well, there are things I said to people, looking back going, you know, one, I knew it was mean when I said it, but no, I didn't realize, maybe they were having like the worst week of their life when I said it.
Right.
And obviously I didn't mean it to be devastating, but it could have been.
Right.
And so there are certain things that even now looking back, I'm still kicking myself over.
When you were writing 13 Reasons Why, who did you feel like you were writing it for, and has that turned out to be different from who's really reading it?
Well, it's funny. I didn't think the book would be as successful as it's been. I just never thought about that. I thought there would be a small group of people that really got what I was trying to say and really loved it, and it would be their favorite book. I thought it would be a small group. I didn't know it was going to be so many people who really could identify with different parts. My audience really was teens. Like, you'll hear a lot of authors say they were just writing the book for themselves. They weren't thinking, you know, if somebody else loved it, great, but it was for themselves. And that really wasn't true in my case. I definitely was thinking about teens as I was writing it.
Okay.
And I knew, you know, the teen experience is different than the adult experience. I can look at what Hannah went through, and most of it can go, that was pretty small stuff. But then realizing, but if that had happened to me when I was a teen, it would just, you know, if that's the worst thing that's happened to you, it's going to feel like the worst thing that could happen.
Right, yeah.
And so a lot of times, it's funny when I hear from adults who will say, you know, but what you went through wasn't that bad. Sometimes all you have to do is say, but do you remember what it felt like when that was the only experience you had? And they go, okay, yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was writing it specifically for teens, and just, you know, plenty of teens have read it and had different impressions of it, which is amazing. But a lot of adults have read it too, and I think that's great. I think it's wonderful, whether it's my book or another book dealing with serious issues, when you find out adults are reading it, understanding it. I think that sends a great message to the teens.
Yeah.
That, you know, yeah, they're not going through these things now, but they still get it, and they're there.
Can you say something about the 13 Reasons Why project, the website?
My publisher and I, you know, we started hearing from a lot of readers about how much the book has meant to them, because it was sometimes the first time they felt somebody understood them. And we knew the reason for that was because we don't talk about those things very honestly and openly in our country and in the world, I found out, after the book came out internationally. And so we started hearing from a lot of teens, and we thought, wouldn't it be great to have a place where people can talk about their experiences with the book, but more specifically, why it meant something to them. Because we were finding things on YouTube, people talking about what the book meant to them, we were finding blog posts, and we thought if people could just have all those things in one place, it'd be a place anybody can go to and see that this is a common experience. And I think it's important to recognize that. I think it's really helpful, actually, to know that other people are dealing with similar issues. It's not just you.
Well, you talked a lot about how you came to collaborate on The Future of Us with Carolyn McClure. Can you just give us a snippet of that?
Yeah, so we weren't friends. I gave a quote for her last book, and that was it as far as our relationship with each other. And just out of the blue, one of my favorite authors emailed, asked if I wanted to write a book with her. Wow. Huge honor.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. It was the easiest time writing I've ever. I always thought writing is hard, but it seemed to be only half as hard, because a lot of it comes from, the difficulty comes from, you want your book to be creative, and so you come up with solutions to these big problems you set in front of your characters, and it can take a long time to figure out the best way to solve these things. And Carolyn and I have just such an almost identical idea about what we like and don't like about storytelling, that if I would throw out, okay, we could do it this way, usually she would be able to shoot down my ideas that I would have shot down given the chance eventually. Right. But it was just, as the person who didn't come up with ideas, she was able to recognize what would or wouldn't work with them. And same thing with me. She would throw out ideas and I would go, well, that doesn't really fit what we were trying to say. And so it felt like almost brainstorming with myself, but just at double speed.
Nice.
And I honestly feel like if I had taken the book off the shelf and only Carolyn's name was on there, it would sound like a Carolyn McClure book. And I also know that I probably could have written a very similar book if I did it by myself, given the time. So it was just an amazing matching.
Wow. If you could look into your future on Facebook, what would you be looking for?
I get asked that so much, and it's so funny because
really?
Because obviously that's a lot of people think about that, anyways. I would love to see who I'm married to or what becomes of my future. And when Carolyn and I were first starting the book, we talked about what would we want to see and all this stuff, and would we look? And we both said, of course we'd look.
Yeah.
But then as we were writing it, and you're thinking about all the complications that could come from that, totally unintended. Even if, like Emma sees kind of a not happy future and makes changes, there's just no way to know 15 years from now, 30 years from now, what this small change we make today, how that's going to ripple into the future, and it could be for positive or negative. So writing the book, we thought, knowing what we know now through all of our discussions about how time works and things, I wouldn't want to see my future.
Yeah.
Like, I would not want to. But, of course, I don't think I could not, if given the chance,
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that people say, or you even said how different the books are, but there's also that similarity. It's like the little things you do make a huge impact that you can't really understand.
It wasn't until we were well into the book that I started noticing that. It has a very, very similar theme.
Right.
I'm told from a totally different kind of storytelling device, but it's about the small things that we do sometimes can have huge impact on not just us, but on other people.
Everybody.
It starts off so fun and pop culture and seeing your crushes, the whole your best friendship being romantic or not, and then all of a sudden you see the character ends up developing and going through that major. Something becomes just so profound that after fighting her future for so long, she realized the best thing to do is just to enjoy where she's at now and to take what she has and to throw that out. And I think everybody wrestles with that, even in a perspective of faith and wanting to know, why this or why that. And so it was just really good on many levels to be reminded that.
Yeah.
And that's where we had this really unique idea for a story that excited both of us. But it wasn't until we really started getting into who these characters were that we started to discover what exactly we were trying to say. And it's just what you said. It's, it is important to plan for your future, but some people can so obsess about their future that they forget to really enjoy the people around them right now. And that's really what we were trying to say. And, one of the things we talked about early on is here's this fantastical idea, but we wanted it to feel very real. So we're like, that's the only part that's going to have some element of fantasy, but it's what would this little thing be like to these regular teens? You know, how would a real person respond to this information?
Yeah. Are there any authors that influenced you on your journey as a writer? Who'd be your favorite authors?
Yeah, the first teen author I ever read was Chris Crutcher. Okay. And that was well after I was out of high school. I heard him speak at a conference, and I just loved him as a speaker, so I wanted to check out some of his writing. So that was actually the first teen book I ever read was Stoughton.
Yeah. And
it just opened up a whole new world of literature.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And Carolyn McClure actually was always one of my top 2 or 3 favorite authors once I got into teen literature. I thought, and I even sent her a fan letter one time, going, you're like the queen of characters. I don't know how you develop these characters and make them so fascinating, but I absolutely loved that about her. That's why, I mean, it was such a huge honor to be asked. And it was funny because one of the reasons she asked to work with me is she wanted to add more of an element of suspense. And so when we were working together, you know, she learned kind of my tricks of the trade, and I learned how she developed characters, which was very different than how I did it. And so it was fascinating to see my favorite author, see how her brain works with writing. And then my favorite book is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli.
Okay.
And yeah, it actually had a huge impact. But I would say the thing that's had the biggest impact on my writing, especially my teen writing, is the TV show My So-Called Life. Okay. That has had the biggest impact. Just how stories are told, and how sometimes the more subtle you are about character, the more the reader gets into the character and tries to read into the character and just gives himself over to the book. Yeah.
Tell me about some of the research that you guys did for the future of us, just going back to the 90s.
We had a lot of fun. We found, you know, there's a IMDb, Internet Movie Database. You can list, you know, like all the movies that came out in '96. And because our book is set in a very specific week, you know, we couldn't have them talking obviously about movies that haven't come out yet. But it was fun to see what was out, what would they have gone to a movie theater to see, what was on TV shows, on TV at the time. And so like we found out that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the final episode was that Friday. So we actually have a little reference to that. Josh is on the phone to his brother who lives on the other coast, who already finished watching the show. Josh hasn't yet, so he's like, don't tell me what happens, you know. So we had a lot of fun. What was on the news? Like the whole Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton thing was on the news. So there's a scene where there's a TV playing, that was on the news all the time. And so one of them makes a joke. Oh, is that still on? You know. And so it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun for us. Yeah.
And those are fun details that I'm sure the adults, as we read it, loved it. I wonder how the teens, like today's teens, if they just skim over that, or ask their parents about it, or.
I mean, we wanted to write. I mean, that was a weird thing to realize as we were working on it, is that having the book set in '96 makes it historical fiction now. Right. And it was funny because when we first announced what the book was about, we'd hear from a lot of teachers and librarians saying, "Oh, I wonder if teens will understand it." And we're like, "Do you say that about a book set in the Civil War? You don't say, will they understand it?" When that was before their parents' time even. And so, but we were conscious of it as we were writing, that just like in any historical fiction, when you talk about technology or something that is so new back then and is old now, you have to address it in a way that feels real to the character. You can't have them talking about it as if they're explaining it, but just that so that teens now can read it and, in a way, like you said, kind of read over it. Even if they don't get it, it has to be addressed, but so that doesn't stop the story.
Like seeing a picture of you and your words in Entertainment Weekly alongside all those movie stars.
That was, I mean, Entertainment Weekly is the magazine I've subscribed to the longest. I mean, I've subscribed to them for years. So when I found out they wanted to do an article on me, that was just huge. Especially they didn't really do much on YA literature at the time. And I thought it was, even my publisher didn't know how big of an article it was going to be. It was like 3 full pages. And so it was a lot of fun. I mean, just that I was going to be in Entertainment Weekly was just amazing. And then with the week it was coming out, I was actually flying. And so I went into the airport, even though I got it, I was going to get it at home. It's like, there it is. Like, I'm in there. It was so weird. And especially, that was the first time, like, they had a professional photographer come in to take pictures of me doing all these, you know, the one that they ended up using was just me sitting on a desk, but we had me on a swing, looking, I mean, it was so fun. It was so cool.
A whole photo shoot.
Yeah.
So then you just stand in the bookstore at the airport wanting to hold it and go, it's me.
No, it was weird. It was such a weird experience.